Yeah, hello and welcome to Saturday League Kickoff. And so much has happened over the first two rounds of the NRL. What about Friday night? We're going to get to that very soon, because on top of that, of course, we saw during the week the announcement of Dylan Brown, the biggest news at the start of this season. Of course, Andrew Abdo has sent out an edict to the NRL clubs about what they can and can't say when it comes to coaches. But all that gets pushed into the background, because Friday night we saw some great rugby league, 2 games. And before we get into that here on Saturday League Kickoff, I want to introduce, well, everyone needs a wingman, okay? And the wingman for every Saturday this year, alongside myself, Scotty Sattler, Andrew Webster. How are you, Webby?
Good to be here, Sats. Very honoured to be here in a new show, Saturday League Kickoff, new studio here at SEN. I'm really looking forward to the year and really, bringing the listener and the viewer, some insights into what comes out of mainly the Friday night games, but also the big issues in the game. And so if we're wingmen, if I'm your wingman, who are you?
I'm Maverick, you're Goose.
Okay. Good. Goose is dead.
If I'm Fred Flintstone, you're Barney. There you go.
I love how the sledging and the tone has just been said straight away. So,
and also this Saturday morning, this is one of your first opportunities to give your opinion about what's happened throughout the week. Also, the games on Thursday and Friday night. And we're going to jump into that straight away. Actually, before we do that, Webby, the first 2 weeks in rugby league, you've been involved in the game. This is your 30th season now, okay? You started... you had a break in between that 30 years of about another 20 years. So you were back in the 1970s. So
oh, yeah, very good.
Covering when my father played. In your 30 years in the game, these first 2 weeks in the pre-season, has it been business as usual? Has it been unique?
I reckon it's just a roll-on from last year. I thought last season... I don't know. I always think that the early 90s were the best football that I can remember. It was like good attacking footy. But what we've seen in the last season, but even the start of this year, it's the athleticism, the skill. We saw it with Kalen Ponga on Thursday night. I just think there's so much to love about our game. And last night was the best evidence of all. A cracking game between the Warriors and Manly, like their form reversal just basically reversed from the first round, and then it will go down as one of the great rugby league upsets, one of the great sporting upsets of the modern era, when the Roosters beat the 4-time defending premiers last night. We
usually never say that about the Roosters.
We don't.
In an upset, do we?
No.
Because they've been a powerhouse for so many years. Let's get stuck into that game, because 38 points to 32 in the end. I think was like many others when you sat back and you thought, well, Cleary will get them home. They'll get to a golden point and Cleary will come out with some miraculous field goal and they'll end up winning this 39-38. Not to be, because they were brave, the Roosters. Under-strengthed, undermanned, a lot of players that hadn't played a lot of first grade, especially big games as well, and looking to start the game and play a significant role. No Lindsay Collins, no Butcher Boys. There's no Victor Radley, no Sam Walker, no Brandon Smith, no Billy Smith. The list goes on. So to come out and not only beat the Panthers, they're such a defensive juggernaut. To put 38 points on them, Webby, amazing,
incredible, and the way that I think obviously we've got Trent Robinson coming up in about half an hour's time on the show to discuss the game. Oh, there's my phone. No, that's not him at all. That's the great David Middleton. There's a bit of a rookie error, keeping your phone on, not putting your phone on silent. Just the way that they moved the ball around, I thought that was really obvious. They just wanted to run Penrith off their feet. They were up in their face. They targeted McLean, the winger, and they played to Dominic Young's height advantage. I thought it was, it was a Trent Robinson masterclass in many ways. He's had a fair bit of criticism after what happened in the first round against the Bronx, but I thought that was a very that was a very Roosters performance with a team of no-name players.
The Panthers, it's easy to say they had an off night, ill-disciplined. Defensively, actually were at different odds on the edges. Usually one player's coming in, the winger's staying out. If you make a mistake as a defender and you go in, whether you like it or not, you've just got to follow your inside man. And that wasn't happening. They were disconnected, the Panthers. But take nothing away from the Roosters.
They were very un-Penrithy.
They were. What about
they made a lot of their fifth tackle options were very not like them, even from Nathan. I just, their class. I don't know. Penrith the last 2 years. I've just done a book with Ivan Cleary that's out at the moment, so I sort of know Penrith inside out and how they think. But they've got away with those games in the last couple of years, particularly last year, and their class was enough. Obviously, the game against Parramatta last year is the one that everyone talks about, but they've done enough and had enough ability to get themselves out of tricky situations, and it looked like it was going to be the same again last night. And Brian Toto going for that corner, 9.5 times out of 10 he scores, but Daniel Tupou, the veteran,
the hand of God,
the hand of Toops, saved the day.
So it was grand final like celebrations, and post match, James Tedesco, he got interviewed by I think it was Emma Lawrence actually before he went to Nathan Cleary. So let's hear what James Tedesco had to say after the game.
You've had a lot of big moments in your life, in your playing career especially. What was that moment like, saving that try then?
I reckon that's our greatest win as a club. The amount of people we have out, the amount of young boys we got against the Premiers, that was unbelievable. I've got no words. The boys are just unreal.
Well, they obviously shocked themselves. They also, there's this belief amongst the squad, but there is this little voice in the back of your head when you're used to losing or you've lost a lot of players that you say, I hope we win, and we're going to do everything we can to win. But if we lose, at least we do it with a lot of effort. And I've been in those teams when you've got wooden spoons where that's what you're thinking each and every week. They would have gone in thinking, it'd be good if we can beat these guys. Probably won't, but we'll give our best. But all of a sudden to have that much emotion after the game, it's great to see. Hey, if you want to get involved in the show, 0457 736 736. Send us a text, myself and Webby. What do you want to talk about throughout the week? It could be Dylan Brown. Should the coaches be allowed to critique the referees and their performances? What about if you're a Roosters fan, a Panthers fan, a Warriors fan? If you are a Manly fan, what about the Dolphins and also the Newcastle Knights? We'll stay in this game still also with Trent Robinson about to come up. I can't wait to hear his response. Like now it's sort of 12, 14 hours, 18 hours later. I'm pretty sure he'd still be on a bit of a high. Connor Watson, 49 tackles, couple of tries. He's always been really happy with that utility role, and you've got to embrace those roles. But the last couple of seasons, Webby, he seems to have he's found his niche, hasn't he?
That's who he is. He's found his place in not just for the Roosters, but also for New South Wales. I loved how those senior players really stood up. Teddy, Connor. I mentioned Chad Townsend before. He was incredible.
His control was good, wasn't it?
His control was great. The way that he kicked for Young, and they put pressure on the Penrith winger McLean. It was just it shows you the value of having experience in that team, and he's there as a not just as a backup, but he's experienced to try and get we don't talk about the Roosters in terms of a rebuild. Nick Politis, the all-powerful chairman, he's not into rebuilds. He's into always being up the top there, like Melbourne. And I'm interested to talk to Trent Robinson about this. He hasn't had to do this too many times throughout his time at the Roosters. He first joined in 2013, won a comp in that first year, won back-to-back premierships after that in 18 and 19. So it must be a really weird period for Robbo. He's been extended out for another 3 years, I think, at the Chooks. I'm interested to talk about the psychology of trying to, keep, a glamour team that's got expectations through the roof.
Yep.
But also while you're trying to rebuild, while you've also got they've had a horrific run of injuries, the Roosters. I think people don't, they're the new Manly, the Roosters. They are. So we don't cut them any slack. They have had a hell of a lot of injuries over the years.
And to open up this season, the start of the season, have to dip so deep into your playing roster. If you're going to win a comp, you probably don't want to use any more than 25 players, 24 players in the season, which is difficult to do. But to be already looking at player number 30, development players that aren't in full-time contracts and earning minimum wage, to be able to be looking into that and getting dispensation to use those players, possibly use those players, not only in any game, but against the Premiers, the four-time Premiers. It's huge. Blake Steep, unbelievable last night, aggressive. Yeah. I love seeing these young kids that they haven't been affected by the game yet. They just go in and they rip and tear. They want to get that much respect from the opposition and their teammates. And then, Nafahu White's been a sort of bench player, a little bit of a starter now. I mean, they forged themselves a great start to their career.
I loved how Liam Martin went after White a couple of times. He had an absolute, as Rabs would say, crunching tackle on him, and the way that he, didn't rattle him. He still backed up and kept running into the teeth of the Penrith defence. I thought was pretty special. What did you think of Penrith?
Clunky.
Very different to what I thought.
In Vegas, they're amazing.
They looked amazing in Vegas. Good to see someone looked amazing in Vegas. Not all of us went Vegas looking amazing.
Day 3,
How dare you?
Horrific.
How dare you?
So I thought they were clunky. Defensively, it looked like what they've put together over the last 5 years. It looked as though that they had new players in positions when it wasn't the case. Defensively, they lost their way a fair bit, and I think Nathan Cleary would be really, and Peter Wallace, their defensive coach, would be really disappointed with a lot of that. They got out-muscled. They lost the battle in the middle, and as soon as you do that, that means it takes time off Cleary's kicking game, whatever it may be. They lost that battle in the middle, and I think when they look at the data and also the highlights this morning as a coaching team, they'll be looking at it and saying, a lot of that first up contact we were losing, they had a lot more. They had a lot more aggression in their confrontation, and in saying that, on the back of the loss, Nathan Cleary, he was interviewed after the game, straight after James Tedesco by Emma Lawrence, and this is what he had to say about the loss.
Definitely was our night. We were awful. It's a big wake-up call for us, and maybe we needed it. But always proud of the way we come home strong and don't roll over and just give up.
There are plenty of, uncharacteristic errors from your side tonight. Can you put your finger on what it was?
Not really. It came from all different areas. Maybe a bit of complacency, just lack of concentration. But as I said, we just got to look at it as a silver lining. Maybe we needed this. Maybe we need this in our season to turn it around, to kick-start it and have a good look at ourselves.
Brutal honesty. Love it.
It was.
Not only to be able to say to his team, give that message. I mean, he's well versed. He grew up in dressing sheds, so he knows how to send the right messages to his teammates and the fans. And the teammates were, hey, guys, I love how we don't roll over. I love how we continue going through to the full-time siren, which, we don't expect anything less. That's what winners do. But to be able to also flip around and say, hey, guys, maybe we've become a little bit too conservative. Maybe we're falling in love with ourselves a little bit after Vegas and we've had that week off. Maybe it's the smack on the arse we needed. I
liked Ivan too in his presser afterwards. He was very pragmatic about it and said, we'll use this to see where we can go. Now look, David Middleton, the statistician guru, has actually got back to me about, I wanted to ask Middo about what are the big upsets in club football. So let's go through them. Western Reds in 20th place.
Yes.
Beat competition leaders Manly 11-8 in round 13 in 1996.
Yep.
That's pretty,
wow.
Do you remember that? Baby Broncos beat West Tigers 28-14 at Campbelltown in
Craig Bellamy
2002.
Coaching. Yeah.
They had 6 players on debut. Another 3 had played 1 or 2 NRL games. The average age was 21. And Bellamy was standing in for Bennett. And they really, really put Craig Bellamy's name out there as a coach of the future. And I think he kicked on a little bit, Bellyache, didn't he? I think he did all right.
Didn't he?
Gold Coast Chargers. This is in 1988. You were probably playing then. No.
1988 was the first year of they were called the Gold Coast Giants back then.
Well, you said Chargers here.
Yeah, 1988 was the first year.
That's right, they were the Giants.
Yeah.
Beating star-studded Brisbane team 25-22.
They did.
Their first win.
At Seagull Stadium, I was there that day, 1988. I was 16. And it was the Broncos hadn't been beaten, I think, at the start of the season. There was a sellout crowd at Seagull Stadium of 13,000 people. And Ronnie Gibbs and Billy Johnston and a no-name centre by the name of Scott Meaney were the stars.
There you go.
Yeah.
And here's another one. Warriors beating Melbourne in the preliminary at Amy Park in 2011. I covered that game. That was a big win. That was one of the great...
The Warriors beat the Melbourne Storm when it was the old McIntyre system, first verse 8th. The Warriors got a couple... I remember they beat them at their old home ground as well, behind Amy Park, Olympic Park.
Yep.
They beat them there once.
Right.
Michael Witt, before he scored the try, he put the ball in the air and scored it before Cameron Smith tried to kick it out of his hands.
Gotcha.
And then that one there you're talking about now.
There you go.
Yeah.
That was an incredible game.
Yep.
And they just ambushed Melbourne at their home ground to make was it their second grand final? That would have been. Yeah, it would have been
2011.
Yeah, because they made it in 2002.
2002, they did. Got beaten by the Roosters.
So thank you for that, Mido. And he's got his new annual out at the moment, which is always a great keepsake for fans. 2004 annual. Go and get it.
Good stuff, good
You
stuff.
like that little plug I gave him there?
0457 736 736 is our text line. On the text, we've got Dunny says, limited chooks chat please, boys. Love you, Webby, the Darlow boy.
Good on you,
There
brother.
you go. And also we've got, must be pleasant change for you, Sats, to be sitting next to someone who knows what they're talking about. Lionel says he's having to go at Matty Rogers.
Okay, I bet he is.
Yeah.
I think he knows what he's talking about, Rat. Come on.
Both codes. Both
Exactly.
codes. Yeah, he's not too bad. Hey, let's get to the Warriors versus Seagulls, Webby, as well. 36 points to 16. When you look at that game, they had it all against them. The Warriors had a couple of calls go against them. One of the most notably was the Jason Saab try. I'm happy with the Daly Cherry Evans try. I'm happy to let that go. Not enough evidence. The bunker sees more vision than what we do. So I'm happy to let that one go. And because it was a highlight we're going to see at the end of the year.
Incredible.
But they had some calls go against them, and the Warriors of years gone by would have probably given that game up.
That's right.
Yeah.
They did. They had. When Turbo scored that first try, I thought, here we go. Like they're gonna lap the Warriors here, but they didn't. They dug in. Anytime the Saab try that wasn't a try, took them out. Brought it back to 18-8. You're right. A Warriors teams in the past would have probably folded there or let the opposition back into the game. I thought I love Wade Egan.
How good is he?
You know what he is? He's a crafty nine. He's a crafty nine.
Yeah.
Not a crafty nine ball. He's a crafty nine.
you know what
I mean. I'm not saying he's not athletic, but I mean, he's just that. To me, he's a throwback.
Yeah.
You don't know what he's going to do out of dummy half all the time, and the way that he threw the dummy and scored the try in response to the Saab try, I just thought, that says everything about it.
I remember watching him through in the junior reps at Penrith, highly regarded. And when he left Penrith, I thought, is this going to be one that's going to come back to haunt them? Well, obviously it didn't, because they went and played in 5 grand finals. Great hooker in Mitch Kenny and Uppy Karoisau that was there as well. So he sort of had to go and get out of the tentacles of Penrith, knowing that he was probably going to play behind Appy and fight out with Mitch Kenny. It took him a while to get going through injury and just getting used to the speed. I got to say, he's one of the premier hookers of the comp.
Yeah, that's what he's become for sure.
He's no look pass.
Look, I don't want to be too critical of the referee Adam G, but there was a period there where, and they were talking about it in commentary about Manly repeatedly being offside. Yeah. They were getting away with it at all. But the big thing I got out of the whole result, Sats, is that after what happened in Vegas, like for them to respond like that, and I thought Andrew Voss just nailed it in his commentary right at the end.
Yep.
Jake Trebojevic, then for Brooks, floats the big pass, intercepted by Tuapeki. Lautawa, Metcalf's got it, they're not going to catch him. Well, you can say right now, what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas.
Oh, he's one of the great ad-libbers.
I love Vossi. That was one of the great calls.
Yeah, outstanding. Yeah. Injuries. Daly Cherry Evans, back spasm. I was only talking to Kieran Foran during the week. He was on our Sports Day show, and we were talking to him off air, and I said, what about Daly? Like, will he play Origin this year? Not quite sure. He's very rarely missed any games. He said, well, you ask Daly, he'll actually tell you. He said, I'm very well put together. Well, we saw last night, back spasms looked really uncomfortable. Very rarely would Daly Cherry Evans ever come from the field. That's a concern. Tommy Trbojevic led to believe it's just tightness of the hamstring. And as you and I were talking about yesterday, and Paul Kent mentioned it on his podcast during the week, the Manly Seagulls, unfortunately, are tied to his hamstrings, how successful their season is. So
that's exactly right.
Watch and wait.
I just think it's something that Turbo's going to have to deal with for the rest of his career. It's always going to be there. And you know what? That's footy.
Yep.
You get that better than me. That's just some players have to deal with a chronic injury for 10 years of their career, and he's going to be one of them.
Or it's that question that has been floating around, do you take the workload off him and put him in another position? Well, if you put him in the centres, you're going to waste him. He's not going to get enough ball.
The way that he set up that first try for himself, basically,
Yeah.
by creating the chance, I just thought that was vintage Turbo.
And Daly Cherry Evans, we're not quite sure. Back spasms. You can usually recover from those really, really quickly. So we have to wait. The problem is he's got to get on a plane and fly home.
So they'll probably be
Kenny as well,
getting home soon, if not
Yep.
they're home now. So it'd be good to we might check in with the
Yep.
Seagulls and see what's going on.
Well, he was obviously very disappointed, Anthony Seabold. This is what he had to say post-match.
Yeah, I think Chaz had I think a little back spasm there. So again, he needs to get checked, and Turbo was feeling a little bit of tightness. So again, we need to get both of those guys checked. So other than speaking to them briefly, then I haven't spoken to the doctor yet.
I think didn't the press conference only go for like a minute 20 or something?
A minute 12.
A minute 12. Where does that sit in the annals?
It's funny when you go. I remember being at a Broncos Canberra press conference, a Broncos Canberra game, and Canberra beat them at Suncorp, and Wayne did his press conference with like this huge throng of Brisbane journos, and then they all left,
Shout
and
out to you,
then Neil, Sneaky Pete was asking all the questions, and then Neil Henry came in, the Canberra coach, and sat down, and I was the only journo left, and so I sort of sat there and looked around and went, well, I guess I'll ask the first question.
Yeah.
And so it was just me and Neil Henry and I think it was just I think back then they only put the coach up. So it was me and Neil Henry just basically talking in the pub for about 5 minutes, and he actually had I can't exactly remember the circumstances, but he had a really good whinge about the refereeing, which is something we're going to talk about later in the show. Bit of a topic at the moment, and I ended up getting a great story out of it. No one else did. So but that sort of happens when you're on the road.
Hey, Webby,
but a minute 12 is that's particularly brief.
In the post-match press conference room where all the media and the coaches and the captains or a player come, can you tell me why in this modern age there's no sort of boom mic or some sort of mic where we know what you're asking? Because we never hear what the journos are asking.
I know.
We just hear the answer.
I've covered. I've been to Super Bowls and NBA finals, and they give you the microphone.
Yeah.
Particularly, or even in Olympics, you've got to put your hand up, and they come to you and give you a microphone, and you rattle off your questions so they can all hear it. That's mainly because the press conferences are so big, but. Look, I don't want to be bagging my younger colleagues, but I've got to say some of the questions that get thrown up. There's nothing worse than being at a press conference, particularly when there's a big issue, and you ask a question, and the coach or the captain responds, and you want to follow up the immediate one. And in some cases, I think your defence looked pretty good today. What do you want to say?
How come you're talking like Buzz for?
I know.
What are you talking like Buzz?
Mate, I just thought your defence was a bit lacking today.
Hey, now I don't know whether you saw this last night. Also before the game was the celebration in tribute to their captain Tohu Harris.
That was beautiful, wasn't it?
Absolutely amazing. Walking out in the field, he had the Korowai on, which is like the garment that the Māoris wear, like the cape, with one of the weapons as well. Then his family joined him. Child, goosebumps thinking about it now, and the fireworks over the top of Mount Smart as well. Amazing scenes.
It was very. It was goosebump sort of stuff. It was. That's the part of the game that I'm glad we embrace.
Yep.
And again, just back to Penrith, like that was a big part of their Wanu was the word and the theme of their run towards their fourth premiership, because it was something that James Fisher-Harris had instilled in that team. I love that about our game. Our game's changed so much. Like the people who play it and the demographic that plays it has changed so much in the last 20, 30 years, and it's a good thing for the game. It's what puts rugby league and rugby union to an extent makes it different to the others. And just what happened with Tohu Harris last night, it was pretty special, wasn't it? Yeah,
it was. It was amazing. Saturday League kickoff. You want to get involved in the show? 0457 736 736. As we go to the break, Pete in Sale, Victoria says, "Good morning, Satts and Webby. As a long-time Roosters fanatic since 1972, well, he started following them in a good period. Last night's victory was as good as I've ever witnessed. The kids stood tall." Thank you very much. Great stuff, Pete. In Sale, Victoria. Hey, let's get to a break here, and after the break, we're going to try and get hold of Roosters coach Trent Robinson. Morning, gents. Big shout out to Sugar and Scope on the call last night. The SEN Sync Stadium is an absolute game changer. Hopefully Hutchie looks to bring it out for all games and not just the four we have right now. Yeah, It's absolutely outstanding. If you're listening to the game, you're at the game live, you can put the earphones in, listen to the commentary, and it's synced up to the live play and also the TV as well.
You know, I listened to all the cricket during the summer. That app was incredible. Yeah, it was it's a real game changer in how you listen to sport.
Everyone needs a wingman, Lundy says. Hence, Rat the winger during the week. Yeah, well, Rat doesn't think he's a winger,
doesn't he?
When you think of Matt Rogers, do you think winger?
I think fullback.
Fullback.
He played fullback at the Tars, didn't he?
For the Wallabies and Tars.
Yeah.
Don't let him hear you say that. Hey, gents, talking about upsets. Dave
in the union sense, I think of a fullback, yeah.
Dave from Seaspray says, I think Richmond over Carlton on Thursday night was a bigger upset. Well, it was in AFL terms, I've got to say, because behind by, 30 or 40 points at one stage, and that Richmond side, many people are saying it's going to come last, have come home and beat Carlton.
What was the price in that game?
Don't know.
There you go, the market. Were they at $13?
Yeah, exactly.
Can I just put this on the record now?
Do it.
I was the idiot. I was the idiot on Morning Glory yesterday who said that I thought Penrith would put 60, maybe 70 on the Roosters.
Well,
can we, and just let's make it clear now, let's not let Trent Robinson know that when we get him on.
Well, you just turn that around and say you think there'd be 60 points scored in the game.
Oh, that's what it was. That's what it was.
Well,
tell me, did anyone see that coming?
I actually, as a joke, my son works at Penrith in the football club, in the football office. And I said as a joke, I said, Roosters 1-12. And he didn't text me back because he would have been filthy that I wrote that, tongue in cheek. Little did I know that that obviously had a huge bearing on the game, my prediction of 1-12.
That's right. That's right, I bet. If the listeners are out there, text in. Tell us what you recall as the big club upsets in the history of the game.
Yeah, it's a good one. 0457 736 736. Let's look back to Thursday night. It seems so long ago. We spoke about Dylan Brown during the week. And we'll talk about the Andrew Abdo edict to the coaches about referees. And you as journos obviously have a different view about this, about what you want to try and get out of coaches after the game when it comes to results. But Thursday night, the Dolphins, I'm going to give them a pass mark for the first week against South. Disrupted preparation. I know you've got to get on with it, but it's not ideal with Cyclone Alfred in southeast Queensland and players pulling out. There would be families that were talking about whether they do play or not. So mindset going into that game, I'm going to give them a pass for that. No pass mark for Thursday night, even though they had to travel down to Newcastle again. That's what you do as professional athletes. Get over it. They can't use it as an excuse. I don't think Christian Wolf will. They were poor, the Dolphins. But I've got to say, I really enjoyed it, 26 points to 12. I really enjoyed the style of rugby league that Newcastle played, Webby. Absolutely.
They used the ball as well. I thought they responded to the Dylan Brown signing. They all seem to lift, and none more so than Kalen Ponga. Kalen's done everything in the game but obviously win a comp, and you can tell that is what's driving him, in the next few years at Newcastle. It might be the reason why he might leave Newcastle at some point if he can't have the joy there that he wants alongside Dylan Brown in the next couple of years. There's something. They've been a little bit all over the place, Newcastle, the last few years. There's been plenty of talk about their recruitment, plenty of talk about chopping and changing in the halves, but Fletcher Sharp gets better every game. Ponga is probably in career best form. His performance in that match on Thursday night is up there with his best in a long, long time. Yeah, if they can keep playing like that, they're in the 8. You'd think.
Absolutely.
And I know they've only beaten the Tigers. I know they played a lackluster Dolphins team, but they showed enough in their football to, for me, that they're a top 8 team.
Well, when you've got someone like Ponga on your side, you're always going to be thereabouts, aren't you? And I love the style.
They've got some experience too, like Frizzell and Gagai, Saifidi. They've got
Jaden Brayley coming off the bench.
That's right. They've got the players there to. I'm not saying they're a team that can win the comp, but they're a team that should be in the 8.
I love, like we're saying, the style that you played, that arcing style, Kalen, where he just went from left to right, and you've got to be fit to be able to do it, and be able to still do it at the 70th minute mark, at the intensity that he does it. And I think you're right. They showed a style of what they think they're going to play with Dylan Brown coming in. Doesn't matter what number they wear on their jersey. Dylan Brown will possibly be the 7. Fletcher Sharp may wear 6 on his back, but he'll probably be more of a roving fullback, just as a decoy runner or coming through and in support with their forwards. And then Caelan's just going to be that guy that's like the sixth, that's just going to go all around the field. And Dylan Brown's going to take the shots when he needs it, or he's just going to tip it onto the man that's going to create most havoc. There's
been so much negativity. It's so typical of the game. Like, there's been so much negativity around.
We do eat our own.
We do. And I blame those hacks in the media for it. But it got so boring in the end. We're talking about the length of the deal and the size of the deal for Dylan Brown, and it's like, right, okay, yeah, I know it's 10 years. We know it's too long, but let's flip that and think about just exactly what him coming into that team can do in the next 2 years. Callum Ponga's off contracted at the end of 27. So for mine, their window opens 26-27 to really make a push towards not just the premiership, but also to convince Callum Ponga why he should extend.
Okay, well, hold your fire there.
I'm going to hold it. Hang on, let me just put this pen back in the holster.
Hold your fire, because there are some rumours circling. Let's listen to Adam O'Brien and Callum Ponga together post-match.
The hardest thing for Caelan is the constant speculation that he's not happy here. His performances aren't showing that whatsoever.
How do I play? Commentaries around. How do I look at it? Didn't look it to me. I look happy, don't I? It's all part of the game. I understand it. I've been used to it. It's been a big part of my career for so long. But again, it's not something that I worry about. It's not going to make me a better player.
I love what Callum Ponga had to say. I love how honest he was. I love where he just looked down the barrel and at the journos and the reporters and said, "How do I look? I'm asking you the question." That's now been archived. Okay.
Yeah.
So the swirling rumours around Callum Ponga, the Roosters, is it scuttlebutt?
I've never heard anything about Callum Ponga being unhappy at Newcastle. I will say this though, Callum Ponga has looked like a player until the last few years. Take it or leave it. He didn't seem to be driven by winning a premiership.
Didn't watch a lot of rugby.
League. He seemed indifferent to the game, but and that was the frustrating thing from a Knights fan's perspective. That's changed in the last few years. The captaincy and the way that he's played has really, has shown that he deeply cares about the Newcastle Knights. The interest from the Roosters is real. I know that. People are trying to say otherwise. I know for a fact the interest from the Roosters are real, and they're trying to. There's definitely the mandate of Nick Politis, the long-term chairman of the club, who has been at that club as a sponsor since '76 and as the chair since '93. Nick's not going to leave the Roosters in a precarious state. He will want them not just pushing for premierships, but winning them before he gives up his tenure as chairman of that club. And I've got no doubt that Callum Ponga is part of that plan. Whether Callum Ponga goes, whether Callum Ponga extends at Newcastle, that's all to be determined. He's not off contract for another 2 years. Because of the NRL's contracting system, we speculate about what players are going to do well in advance of when their contract ends. That's just, I know the media's really good at that, but in some respects, let's have a look at the system that's in place. But yeah, I don't think for mine, the Knights signing Dylan Brown to a deal of that length was as much about insurance in case Callum Ponga leaves.
Well, it's going to be for the next November 1. If you're Newcastle, you're going to Callum Ponga now and saying, "Rightio,
let's extend
to 2030. Let's yourself, Dylan Brown, Jacob Saifidi, Bradman Best, who's taking up anywhere from around 650 to 700,000 reportedly of their salary cap. Let's collectively get maybe an elite hooker in, and let's try and build this Melbourne model." And we'll talk about that with Dylan Brown a little bit later on. Plenty more to talk about with that. So that match 26 points to 12. I've got to say, still talking about Ponga, the movement that Ponga put on for the Dane Gagai try.
Yeah.
He moved his hips mid-air, knew where the defender was. Before the ball even got to him, he put his hips outside the defender.
You can't, you tell me, you can't coach that, can you?
No, that's just intuition.
That's just instinct.
Yeah.
That was a pretty special play.
Yeah.
I love watching him play. He's one of my favourite players to watch. Where there's just like, Reece Walsh is obviously the same, but look, I think the way that he runs and moves, he's different to Jared Hayne, but he has that sort of presence. They're just that electricity when he touches the ball that you just think something's going to happen.
You're a Dragons fan.
I'm a sufferer, I would say.
You're a Dragons fan. So, and what you talked about with Callum Ponga, he makes me watch Newcastle.
Yeah.
For whatever he just makes me watch Newcastle. Is there another team, another player that you wouldn't generally watch, but because there's a player there, it makes you watch
Broncos. I love watching the Broncos play.
Yeah.
You know, I don't think I don't think they're going to. If they win the premiership this year, it's not going to be through defence. They're going to be putting 30, 40 on their opposition. But that run that they made there, not last year, the year before, was something pretty special. I love watching Reece Walsh play. He's just. I'm not like one of the girls down on the sideline, asking him to come and sign my jump. He does. He's very sparkling eye. But I mean, he's a special kid, and it was sad to see him cut down by injury and form last year. I want to see that from him this year, because when players like Reece Walsh are playing at the best of their ability, the game is humming.
Do you know what I hope for Reece Walsh?
What?
That when Kevin Campion came down from a little place in Mackay called Serena,
Yes.
west of Mackay. He came down to the Gold Coast at the end of 1991 with Jamie Goddard, and he was this beautiful, fresh-faced, blonde-haired kid. Looked like he was a surfie. He had skin like tissue. It was beautiful. By the time he retired, he looked like his head had gone through a mincer. So I wonder if Reece Walsh is going to go in the same path.
You know what does this? 30 years of journalism has exactly the same effect on your head. Or look at Buzz. Look at 50 years. That's 50 years of
50?
journalism. That's 50.
Wow.
Buzz is 50 years.
Hey, 50 years.
As a journo.
Wow.
A great man.
What do you reckon his biggest broken story would be? His largest story broken. We'll think about that. We actually might ask him.
Well, let's ask him. He'll give us 2 hours on it.
Yeah. Also, a little bit later on, I want to on the back of Walsh and Ponga, Billy Slater has this embarrassment of riches, which is, he gets Tommy Gilbert back, he gets Tino Fasu-Malawi back, but he's also got Ponga and Reece Walsh to decide who wears that number 1 jersey. I've got my own theory around it, but I'm not Billy. We're going to talk about that a little bit later on. 0457 736 736 is the number if you want to get involved in the show. We've got plenty of texts here. We're going to get to those over the next couple of hours because this is, of course, Satts and Webby for Saturday League Kickoff. Still getting used to the name.
I don't like the order.
Don't like this?
Yeah, is this in your contract that you're first?
Well, I'm older than you.
Yeah, well,
so there you go.
Much older.
Let's get to a break. The results, Thursday night, and there's 2 amazing games last night, Webby. And before we get to that, your designer stubble apparently is affecting
apparently this is our first
your
show.
microphone.
My microphone is my second chin, and the designer stubble on that chin is rubbing the microphone. So if there's any interference for the listeners out there, I apologise. I'll get rid of this Gucci stubble in the ad break so you can hear what we're saying.
Now, it was one of the great games last night, one of the great efforts. I think that's the important word here. One of the great efforts from all those individual players of the Roosters last night. Before we get their head coach on, have a listen to this.
Yeah, feels like it at the moment. A lot's happened obviously in between last game and this game with players being in and out, and the amount of guys I guess under 5 games, and it's really nice when 17 guys have belief in the jersey and have belief in a game plan, and then they go about executing it and they nail it. It was really nice to watch. Confidence that they played with was really nice to watch.
I love how their coach Trent Robinson didn't try and contain his excitement after the game with his assistant coaches and going around to the players in the dressing sheds after the game. Webby, he's one of the great coaches of the modern era, and he joins us this morning. How are you, Robbo? Are you good?
Hey Satts, hey Webby.
So first and foremost, congratulations. And I was just saying earlier on, Robbo, that when you were being interviewed before the game, the one word you spoke about was effort. You just wanted effort in every one of those little areas with your players. Well, they definitely turned up and simplified things last night, didn't they?
Yeah, I thought, I think I heard me say it there about the 17 guys that, when you keep it quite clear and guys get to work as a front rower, as a winger, as a halfback, whatever their role is, and they do it with effort and clarity with the game plan, then you can get your results. So no matter what the possibility is or what people think, the belief in that's high within the club, and it was a good result on the back of that.
Robbo, thanks for coming on this morning. After the game, Teddy called it probably the greatest win he's been involved with at the club. Can I ask you this? After everything that you've done at the Roosters, is that your most satisfying, or does it rank as one of your most satisfying victories in charge of the Chooks?
Yeah, I think, Webby, it does, because, it's a round 2, 2025. Like, it's what people see as insignificant sometimes, but there's a lot that goes into a footy week, and to see. So we had 2 guys there that have hardly ever trained with us. So I said, I think Taylor Lasalo is on the tools this morning, concreting again.
Wow.
This morning. So, and then for guys that have debuted last week, the emotion around that, and then they're starting this week, there's a lot that goes into it. So there's 2 parts to it. Young guys being able to play their best footy in their second or first game, and then older guys being able to lead the way. I think the culmination of all that, and then when people ask you questions during the week and you walk around and everyone's quite nice, but they've got a look in their eye that sort of says they don't believe in what you can do. And so when that belief starts in a small meeting at the start of the week and then culminates in a win last night, it's really satisfying.
Hey, Robbo, when you talk about all those little tiny efforts, are you the sort of coach in the days going into round 3, you know you want to try and get rid of it as early as possible and focus on the following week, but you can also use it to your advantage. Are you the sort of coach to highlight a few of those little special efforts, like the Daniel Tupou try right on full time on Brian Ty, who 9 times out of 10 scores that try and steamrolls someone? Do you identify those in your video sessions?
Yeah, you have to. You have to, there's a lot of learnings that happen at the start of a season. So you've got to, we had big ones last week, and again last night there'll be one. So you've got to pick up and keep learning game on game, but you must highlight those every single week, those efforts, because they're the glue that bind the style of play together. Everyone can have their different system of play and different teams, but the effort areas is why a player plays in a team and why someone wants to stand next to them. So, celebrating them is really key. That'll be Monday for us.
Yeah, it's a great education for any coach out there. On the text line, Robbo, we've got Chookster77, who's a regular listener, says, I can't remember ever waking up being as proud of my Chooks as I was today. I got a few goosebumps when I just read that, Chookster77, and it's also proud for you as a coach. Now, when you talk about those players that haven't had a lot of experience, Mark Nwanga-Nituasi, he's continued improving in the game, and he's only had a handful of games at rugby league, Robbo. You must be just over the moon with the way that he's progressing.
Yeah, I think, there was questions around him, the ability to play centre, and, I've been asked about it a lot in the pre-season, and he's trained a lot there. And I think that was his 3rd game last night. So he's got some big game experience, obviously, in Union. But then his ability to try and adapt to rugby league and try and do all the things that, that we ask of him in the game, and that's different to rugby union. But then how do you hold on to some of the creativity and spark, which is the reason we signed him. So that was definitely his best game in the colours, and I thought he created a point of difference for us last night.
Robert, you had a lot of your younger players, as we discussed earlier, really stand up. For mine, your senior players really made a difference. For mine, Chad Townsend just showed in one game of football why he's so important to your club, particularly his kicking game. And just tell me about what influence Chad Townsend has had on that team.
Yeah, just with the thing with a halfback, and, we played the best in the game last night in Nathan. And for a halfback like Chad and Nathan, what they do is they allow everybody else to do their job. And, you could play with sometimes a front rower at 5'8", if you play with those halfbacks. And so what he did, I love the way Sandon played last night, Smith. And so what Chad did was said, look, I'll look after the kicking and the direction, and you go and run, you go and play, you go and support. And that's what Chad does. He when you bookend the sets with a halfback that knows where to put the ball and can consistently do it, then you can allow everybody else to play in the moment, and that's what Chad's done for us.
Robbo, tell me about, just away from the game last night, how are you looking at this season? People talk about it being a rebuild season for the Roosters. You know this far better than me. Rebuild is not sort of a term that gets thrown around a club like the Roosters. The expectation from those outside the club in particular is always a lot more than that. They always think that you should be pushing for premierships, and the reality of modern day rugby league is that you can't. What's your mindset going into this season? What do you want out of this year?
So there's a couple of things there. You know, you always want the belief that you can win games. So we always want to be able to, you know, when people say that, that's why I don't like sort of talking about it in that way, is because that's an excuse not to win. And I don't think you can go into an NRL competition and not believe in what you're capable of. And at the same time, what we want to do is get those players that have been building through our system for years to play a lot of footy games. And that's why it's different to a rebuild. There's going to be peaks and troughs in the way that they play, and we've got to ride that. But that doesn't mean we're going to accept not getting results this year. So it's the combination of the two. How do we play lots of games, get those guys like Rob Toya, Celeste Fiketti, you know, even Siwa Wong coming into his third year, and just play them and play them and play them and allow them to make decisions and back them at the end of games. But also we are expecting results.
Yeah, good stuff. Hey, also on top of that, happy birthday, Robbo. What a great way to celebrate your birthday.
Happy birthday, Robbo.
Yeah, appreciate it.
Enjoy.
Thanks for that.
No,
Thanks for coming on.
You're a lot of fans on the text line here, Robbo, and it was a great win last night over a powerhouse over the last 5 years. So thanks for coming on this morning. Have a great weekend. I'm sure you will.